Well, there's nothing like playing the Cleveland Browns to get back to winning ways. The Cincinnati Bengals defeated the Browns in Week 7 to get off their little losing streak that they had here, and we'll talk more about that game in just a few minutes here. I'm Anthony Cosenza. I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Howe. Connor, how are you?
I'm good, man. Excited for the resurrection of the season, hopefully, after that game.
That's right. That's right. And we're also joined by a special guest. We haven't had a guest for a few weeks. Ken Meringolo with Hogs Haven is joining us. Ken, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm not rooting necessarily against you guys personally. I wish you nothing but the best, obviously.
Appreciate it.
Starting next week.
Yeah. And for those of you, this is one of the weeks that for those of you that download the show on iTunes and all of that, I hope that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out the video, because Ken himself has a pretty nice little man cave behind him, and he's got a fantastic shirt on. Do you want to describe what that is? Because it's your own creation there, Ken.
It's Scott McLuhan became our general manager 2 years ago, or this is his second full season. We have been starved for an actual legitimate professional head of a franchise, or for lack of a better word. He's kind of our savior. McLuhan came in, may have been a couple rough pronunciations of his name, but right away I said, that's McLovin. He's our McLovin. And so I took the license from Superbad, put his face on it, and now I got a t-shirt. And it's my favorite t-shirt now.
I love it. That's pure genius right there. Ken is with us to preview the Bengals Week 8 matchup against the Redskins, which is taking place in London. And for guys like Connor and myself, I'm not really revved up about it because, Ken, I got to be up at about like 6 a.m. to start getting ready and watching the coverage of this game. But that being said, these are it seems like two pretty evenly matched teams. The Redskins made the playoffs and won the division last year and got off to a bit of a slow start this year, but they're playing a little better. But news and notes, there's a couple of interesting injuries. Josh Norman and Jordan Reed appeared to, I think I read they came back to practice on Wednesday.
They both practiced today. I don't know if it's clear that they've necessarily been cleared to play in the game on Sunday, but they both practiced today. I believe Trent Williams was out there as well.
Okay. Yeah. So those are three of the Redskins' better players, obviously. Let's start with Norman. First of all, how has he looked overall this offseason? Because he was one of the biggest gets this offseason by any team. And how do you feel, and Redskins fans feel, about the matchup with A.J. Green, who is having himself a monster season?
A.J. Green's awesome. Players like him, they're going to get theirs. And so you're not necessarily saying, Josh Norman shut down A.J. Green. You hope he can. But A.J. Green is going to be A.J. Green. So you can't get overly worked up about a play here and there. To be honest with you, it's amazing how good Josh Norman is. When we don't have a ton of talent on defense at key spots. And when you look at the way we've won some of our games, or even been competitive in some of our games, and you wonder how we did it, and you go back and watch the tape, and you're like, oh, yeah, Josh Norman. I mean, he's not necessarily shutting the same guy down on every play, but he's locking it down. He's forcing the ball to other places. He makes such an impact on all levels of the field, up front and of course, deep. He's a leader. Guys on the squad respond to him, and you hear people say, "Oh, he's a baller," stuff like that. The guy, he's tough as nails. I watched him come off the field a couple times with injuries. I didn't think that he was going to get back on the field, and I watched him while the game was going on, literally talk his way back in. Now, in today's day and age, with the concussions, you're not going to see that. However, on my show last night, The Audible, we talked about him playing this week. I don't think many players would come back and play after the knock he took last week in today's NFL. But what I said last night was, I'm not saying the doctors should clear him. I'm not saying that it's the right thing to do for him to play, but I know in my heart that he's the kind of guy who figure out a way to pass whatever test he's got to pass. He's got to pass it by tomorrow in order to make that flight over. And I just always kind of thought he's going to play, because he's one of those guys you just always think he's going to figure out a way to be on the field. So I expect him to play. If he doesn't play, it's kind of a good thing, because he'll get 2 weeks off with our bye week. But I just see him as a guy who just figures out a way to get on the field, and another reason why the guys in the locker room respond to him.
So Jay Gruden, we all know, spent a significant portion of time in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And, I think that Bengal fans, I don't know, people had mixed opinions. I think personally, I wasn't very impressed with his play calling. I thought it was crazy that he made, Andy Dalton throw 50-something passes in one of his, I think it was his second year in the league in a playoff game. And so he was a great offensive coordinator for what he was, but I don't exactly think that I didn't expect, I should say this, I didn't expect him to be able to go into Washington and win a division within 2 years. That was really impressive of him. It was impressive of him to do that despite the whole RG3 controversy. How do you guys think that Jay Gruden has performed in his first couple of seasons, and are you guys satisfied with what he's doing? And do you think there's anything he could improve on, or anything that, anything that would indict him or anything like that?
In short, I do think he's our guy. I don't think there's any reason right now that would lead me to believe we should move away from him. I always talk about the marriage between the head coach and the GM, and between McLovin and Jay Gruden. I think you have a pair of guys who are on the same page. Keep in mind, McLovin didn't pick Jay Gruden; he inherited him, and most GMs at some point always want their guys. But I think Jay Gruden has a chance to become McLovin's guy. Our offense is the strength of our team. We statistically speaking, we're moving the ball. We're running the ball well. Our offensive line has improved. A guy named Bill Callahan, who a lot of NFL fans know, he's been in the league a long time. He's a great coach. As you know, Jay Gruden favors size, which also syncs up with McLovin's philosophy on players. Big, strong, athletic guys. Measurables, long arms, reach, burst, speed. I mean, these little metric things that, you might say they're kind of Moneyball-esque, but not really. Everyone wants big, strong guys. But on the line of scrimmage, we've seen a lot more size come on thanks to Jay Gruden. That's what he likes. At the end of the day, his scheme is working. Sean McVay is actually calling our plays. I love what we do on offense. I'm a Kirk Cousins guy. Do I think he's a Hall of Famer right now? Of course not. But he's more than capable of running this offense. In Jay Gruden's offense, you don't ask your quarterback to be the hero. You teach him how to do it. There's not hot reads. In his offense, everything's kind of built in. So if Kirk Cousins just understands what the defense is doing in front of him, he's going to make a lot of completions. And when we're operating at our best, there's that balance, and he's not throwing for 50 times a game. I do see him throwing the ball a lot this week, though, and we'll see how that plays out, for our benefit or our detriment. But to answer your question, I like Jay Gruden. I think he's done enough to earn, a chance to stick around for a little while, and I think that his offense has already been on the improvement scale, and I think there's a ton of room to improve it. For example, throw the ball more to Deshaun Jackson. Why not? I mean, that's something you could do a whole lot more. And have it impact your team in a variety of ways. We haven't really done that a whole lot yet successfully. So there's areas to build on this offense. And I think, give McLovin another draft, another free agency period to bring in some guys. I think you're going to see Jay Gruden probably – I think he's going to be our coach for a while.
Yeah, so you kind of hinted at it, but Deshaun Jackson's one guy I think particularly could have a big day against the Bengals. We saw in the Bengals win against the Dolphins that Kenny Stills, that kind of embattled speed threat that they have, he's a very good deep threat, but he doesn't have consistent hands. Deshaun Jackson, obviously a better player overall. And the Bengals have really struggled, I think, against quality deep threats. Sammy Coates burned them for the Steelers. And they'll face a long string of deep threats in the upcoming weeks, which is kind of, Deshaun Jackson isn't the number one guy you want to go up. He's not the number one guy you want to go up against to start off a string of, games against deep threats. But that being said, how has he looked this year? Like you said, he hasn't done, he hasn't been putting up the numbers you'd like to see out of a guy who's signed for what I would assume is a pretty sizable contract. Do you think that he could have a big impact on Sunday?
I hope so. First of all, obviously, I hope so. I think for whatever reason, that the deep ball to Deshaun Jackson just hasn't been there. You can chalk it up at times to Kirk Cousins just not having enough time to let the deep route develop. I think we have some really gifted weapons on offense. Jordan Reed, Jamison Crowder, Chris Thompson, even before you get to Pierre Garçon and Vernon Davis for that matter. Kirk Cousins is really comfortable in that underneath and intermediate area, and it's easy to throw the ball to Jordan Reed because he catches everything and he's a stud. So you got to probably tell Kirk to take that shot at least once or twice in the first half. Whether they make it or not, that's what makes the defense honest, and that's ultimately what opens it up for the underneath stuff anyways. When I look at Deshaun Jackson, here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about him checking out mentally if you don't use him enough. He is that kind of player. Now, he's a great player, and he's an elite talent, and not many guys can do what he does. You know, the only big difference between him and A.J. Green at the end of the day is size, because at the end, they're both really number ones, but you can't do things with Deshaun that you would do with A.J. I would argue that the players like Deshaun – now, just let me back up for a second. Deshaun Jackson is a Philadelphia Eagle to me, always and forever. So I have a real hard time with him wearing the burgundy and gold. I'd love to see him go off. I cheer my butt off for him if he does well. But I still think about him in the green. And I wrote an article today, and it'll be out tonight and tomorrow morning. This is his last year of his contract. Deshaun Jackson will be a free agent. Still in that 30-year-old range. He's going to get another contract from somebody. I don't think it's going to be us, unless I'm just dead wrong, and that's the way our money's going to be spent. I might dangle him before the trade deadline, not because I don't think we can use him, because we can. It's because we're not using him. So if you're not going to throw him the ball, you think someone's not going to give us a draft pick for Deshaun Jackson? I think they would. You don't see those deals made too very often. So, and it's a crazy thing, and I get crushed every year. I've read the trade Deshaun Jackson article every single season since he's been here. So it's more of a tradition than anything else. They're not going to trade him. Connor, to answer your question, I think he could have a huge day because that's the kind of player he is. It just comes down to whether or not the Kirk Cousins and Jay Gruden get in their head that they're going to throw that ball. Whether it's there or not, just throw it out and air it out. He can protect the quarterback deep. But more often than not, he has this just uncanny ability to make a play on a ball at full speed that just not many guys can. I mean, it's really, really hard to guard. I don't know, which one of your quarterbacks, can match up with that. Just the same as I don't know what one of our cornerbacks can match up with A.J. Green, for example, if Josh Norman can't play.
This is the Orange and Black Insider. We're talking with Ken Meringolo of Hogs Haven within the SB Nation network of sites. And we are previewing the Redskins game with the Bengals in London this Sunday. Ken, you mentioned Kirk Cousins a couple of times, and I kind of got a two-pronged question for you about it. Sure. So a lot of people see a very big resemblance between the play of Andy Dalton and the play of Kirk Cousins. There are a lot of comparisons there, a little bit of surprising ability to scramble a little bit, some scrappiness, but also, maybe even a little bit of a stigma of not being able to win the big game, at least as of yet in their respective careers. Number one, do Redskins fans view that as a slight or a compliment to Kirk Cousins in that comparison? And number two, we've seen him struggle early this season, and then he's kind of come around. And as he's come around, the team has obviously started winning some more games. So what kind of sparked the change there?
Well, the first question first. You could do a whole lot worse than being compared to Andy Dalton. I think Andy Dalton's a fine quarterback, certainly a player worthy of investing in if you're an NFL team. I always say, every NFL team has to, at some point in time, choose who they're going to invest in at the quarterback position. You don't always get a chance to invest in Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck or Tom Brady. Sometimes you have to develop a guy and believe in him and pay him. I think that's Kirk Cousins for us. If he compares favorably to Andy Dalton in any way, I'll take it. I like Andy Dalton. I want to say he's got some great nickname that involves Ginger, something Ginger. I forget what it was, but I always, because he's been on my fantasy team a number of times.
The Red Rifle is one, yeah.
The Red Rifle, yep, the Red Rifle. So I like Andy Dalton. I think he's capable of leading, a high-powered offense. Hey, listen, Andy Dalton didn't, illegally contact Antonio Brown last year on the field. Andy Dalton, wasn't arguing with the refs and causing personal foul penalties to put the Cincinnati Bengals out of contention in that playoff game last year.
He didn't fumble in the last minute either.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think that similar to the Redskins, the Bengals are pretty set on offense. I love their weapons. I love Tyler Eifert. I love Gio Bernard. I was happy to see Jeremy Hill, go off a little bit last week. It's a fun offense to watch. And at the end of the day, I love Marvin Lewis. So kind of going back to the second part of your question, which I think that as far as Kirk Cousins is concerned, Anthony, and kind of redirect me here on my answer, but I feel like Kirk Cousins and both Kirk Cousins and Andy Dalton are capable of being above average, not just top half, top third quality quarterbacks in this league. Both teams should be very happy to have them. And at the end of the day, neither one of those guys is probably going to be the reason why their team, failed, I believe.
All right, I've got one more question for you. And kind of like we were all just talking about for a second, the Bengals, obviously, their playoff woes, and their biggest woe in the playoffs and in the regular season, which I kind of want to get to, is the fact that they haven't been able to stop the run. And, Arian Foster ran for, I think 200 yards or 300 yards in 2 games, something like that in the playoffs, and just ran up the scoreboard. And even, we saw last week Kevin Hogan, a backup quarterback for the Browns, the third string at the beginning of the year, just ran for 100 yards against them, I think, on 7 carries. And so the Bengals obviously haven't been able to stop the run. The Redskins have been running the ball well with Matt Jones and I think Chris Thompson. But I've heard that, Matt Jones had a little bit of an issue with fumbling. And I'm just curious, what's your opinion on the Redskins ground game? Do you think it's an effective running attack, and do you think they're going to have success on Sunday?
Yeah, and Anthony, did I answer your question on the last? You had a second half of that question. I felt like I didn't hit it.
No, you got it, man. You got it.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. As far as the running game is concerned for the Redskins, so first of all, I compare Chris Thompson to Gio Bernard. Although he gives up an inch or so in height and he's giving up pounds, Gio is way more established. It came into the league with a lot more, glitz, out at UNC. So it sounds like I'm a freaking Bengals fan, by the way, as I'm talking to you guys.
Hey, that's why we brought you on, buddy.
Join the bandwagon while it's open.
Our offense runs through Chris Thompson right now, and that's the truth. If you go back and look at his touches, you look at when he's getting the touches, you look at the plays they're calling for him. He was on the field for that entire last drive when we took the lead against Detroit last week. He's getting anywhere from 10 to 12 to 15 carries, anywhere from 4, 5, 6 or more catches. And he's elusive, he's fast. He will remind you of Gio. He's a little bit smaller than Gio, probably a little bit more fragile. We talk about Matt Jones. You asked about his fumble problems. The interesting thing, because we do a lot of draft stuff, as I'm sure you guys do in the offseason. You get into the nitty-gritty of drafting and scouting, and you know that they give a crap about all different kinds of measurements. The interesting thing about Matt Jones, and the reason why he dropped in the 3rd round, because he had much higher ratings on almost all parts of his game, but his hands were measured just a little bit small. It sounds crazy. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a good back, but from a scouting perspective, a hand measurement correlates into some probability of risk, and that hand measurement correlates to fumble risk. Now we knew this when we drafted him, and if he didn't have these fumble problems, you would say the hand thing means nothing, and the hand thing might actually mean nothing. It could actually be because of something else. But because he does have the fumble problems, it makes me think about why he fell to us at the bottom of the third round of the draft. He's been dropping the ball, and the problem is that when he drops the ball, it's in the worst possible time, like on the goal line. When you just drop the ball in the end zone and just give up 7 points. That's gonna leave it's gonna leave a mark when you talk about Jay Gruden's confidence in a guy. There's a lot of coaches in this league that will never go back to him. I think we have to go back to him. But what you will see this week, you'll probably see my boy R. Kelly, Robert Kelly. I love calling him R. Kelly. We got all the R. Kelly jokes, by the way, all week long. I think that R. Kelly, I think he's going to start. I think they're going to start him. I think they're going to give him carries. He's a rookie. He's raw. He's from Tulane. I don't think he's as good as Matt Jones. He's certainly not as naturally athletically talented as Matt Jones is. But he hasn't fumbled, to my knowledge, and he plays hard, like you would expect kind of a lesser heralded running back guy to play. They just always seem to play just a little bit harder. So I do expect to see him early and often for the Redskins. The Bengals run defense isn't the worst, and probably not worse than ours. So I would expect the Redskins to want to run. And, whenever I think about these England games, they tend to be pretty terrible games. People who wake up early on Sunday morning to watch NFL football have not been rewarded mightily in some of these games. And I've been saying all week, a terrible England game favors the Redskins. Why? Because I don't know. Because it seems like when we get ourselves into nasty, ugly games where you just feel terrible, your stomach's all knotted up, you're like, oh, what the hell is going on? I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen next because stupid stuff just keeps happening. I think that favors us because I think Cincinnati's a little bit more of an established team. I think Cincinnati counts on certain things going their way because it has gone their way. And so if little random things don't go Cincinnati's way, I think the Redskins are used to that. I think the Redskins might be like, okay, it kind of evens the playing field. And it sucks out loud for Bengals fans, season ticket holders, and home team fans that have to give up a home game so that the Bengals have to go on the road to England. That sucks. I would be so pissed. So pissed. And it might be the equalizer this week.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get your prediction, Ken, I meant to do this early on. Yep. Give us a little bit of background, your history with Hogs Haven and the podcast that you mentioned already in the interview. Kind of what's some of the stuff you're doing over there so we can direct some of our fans, at least over there for the week, to check out some of your content.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm throwing all this love at Tyler Eifert and Jeremy Hill. Bring it on back.
You're wrapping it with a ribbon, man.
All right, so I've been on Hogs Haven since 2009. Buddy of mine, Kevin, and I picked it up in 2009. He's gone for a couple years now. So I'm the managing editor. I got about 10, 12, 13 writers. And, we hit all the kind of the same singles and doubles that you guys hit, on a daily basis. The interesting thing about Washington, D.C., for a town that has, for a major media market with a team in all the major sports, the Redskins are it. It's a unique beast in that it's a major media market that's dominated really by one team. Nothing could happen. What am I trying to say? Like a Redskins preseason game will crush Capitals playoff game or a Wizards playoff game or even a Nationals. I mean, it's weird. And so, being, on a Redskins site and kind of, developing kind of, a voice of the Redskins fan base has been awesome because it's given us some really cool access, obviously, to the players. We do a bunch of stuff with the Comcast Sportsnet station here in town. I do post-game stuff, over in the studios, which is just super cool, because they have the former players that you get to, rub shoulders with. Right. My podcast is The Audible. We cover all DC sports, we target the people who like, Skins, Wiz, Nats, Caps. You're a DC homer, you come on over and check us out. But at the end of the day, Redskins stirs the Kool-Aid in Washington. That's why I got, Benjamin here. I got my Hogs signed helmet. And if you notice behind me, now that says 21 with Cooley.
That's Sean Taylor, right?
That's Sean Taylor.
Yeah.
Sean Taylor went to that Pro Bowl posthumously. He had been killed. And Chris Cooley and Chris Samuels and Ethan Albright, the three Redskins who were in that game, all wore 21. That's cool. So that Chris that's actually, so cool. I got that from Chris, and it's
that's awesome.
So it's super cool. I know to see your memorabilia back there is awesome. And so it's a lot of fun. It's a grind, as you guys know. It's a second job, but it doesn't necessarily pay, like a job of any kind for that matter. And but you love doing it, and I love doing it, and it's rewarding. And I mean, you guys as Bengals fans, you've had your down years. You've been in the big game, and you've won. You've done a lot of winning, and Marvin Lewis has I love him as a coach, and he's helped you guys do a lot of winning. Redskins have had some pretty down decades. At 91 was a Super Bowl, last Super Bowl we were in. I always talk about you guys, know the Twitter generation and this whole social media generation and the awfulness that gets spewed, in this, arena. Well, all the Redskins fans that are part of that, they don't know anything about winning as far as Redskins are concerned. They grew up without it. and it's so toxic and terrible at times. It can really you really kind of just have to put a blanket over your head and just
you lose faith in humanity a little bit up on Twitter. I mean, you know, some of these people just, oh man,
it's tough, man. It's real tough. So I appreciate, you know, anyone who's interested in checking us out at Hogs Haven. But you know, at the end of the day, I got no animosity towards Cincinnati. Everyone has those teams that they just don't like. And for me, Cincinnati's not one of them. So I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you guys about this.
Well, and I appreciate you just spending time and coming on. I know you've got both work and family responsibilities, and you were kind enough to donate your time, and I appreciate it. Obviously, a very entertaining interview. A prediction, if you will, if you have one, before you get out of here, Ken.
All right. Okay. So now, you know, Hogs Haven, we got guys on the ground out in England. You know, I got a writer in Tottenham, and you know, he does our Madden simulations, and he takes care of all that from England. He's our Hogwarts correspondent, but that's not and I got another guy he's our Royal Baby News correspondent. So if Kate Middleton ever is pregnant, we got a guy right there, and we go live. I mean, we break everything to go live. So let's just say I have a little bit of some on the ground knowledge of England. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm thinking like a 24-21, 27-24 kind of game. Yeah. Obviously, I'm going to pick my guys just because that's what I'm going to do. I don't think this game's good. I don't think anyone's going to blow anyone out. I expect the players on both sides of the field that you would expect to make plays, the Eferts and the Greens on your side. I would like to say Deshaun Jackson and Jordan Reed on my side. We'll see if Kirk Cousins becomes that guy. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to make plays on defense. In a way that we didn't a couple times against Detroit. So let's say 27-24 Redskins, and everyone's happy, and we're still friends at the end.
Yeah, there you go. I'm in close agreement in terms of it being a close game, but appreciate the time, Ken, and all of the great insight. I know it's asking of your time, and I greatly appreciate it. Ken Meringolo, the site manager over at Hogs Haven, the SB Nation Redskins site, helping us preview the upcoming Redskins game in London. Ken, enjoy yourself. You'll at least get to sleep in, I think, a little bit later, hopefully, than we will here on the West Coast. But appreciate the time.
Anthony, a proper tailgate begins at 6 a.m. all our time.
That's true.
There's only one way to do it.
Especially when you said your podcast was turning into a little bit of a whiskey jam, right? So,
it's whiskey every. So I got to tell you guys this, because you're going to watch our defense and you're going to say to yourself, how in the hell have these guys won 4 games? Because it's like, I don't know how they're doing it. None of us know how they're doing it. I compare our defense. It's like if all of a sudden porn pay-per-view starts coming in for free on your TV. Like, what do? Nothing. You don't turn the TV off. You don't call and report it. It's just like you just ride it out. You know, that's the way our defense. I'm not asking any questions. I don't care how it's happening. I'm just going to keep on watching. So if this game gets ugly, just remember I said ugly favors us.
Okay. All right, and we'll keep the pay-per-view analogy in mind too. That was a good one. I like that. Hey, keep rocking the McLevin shirt. Enjoy yourself this weekend. Thanks for the time, Ken.
All right, guys. Best of luck to you guys.
Appreciate it. Same to you.